I would seriously give yourself 3 minutes to think about this. If you really want to feel comfortable with this. Because this is an example of one of those problems where maybe you follow along as the teacher does it, but if you don't think about it on your own, it's not going to help out. So I'll read the question, assuming you've read it yourself. Yearbook design. A sponsor for the school yearbook has asked that the length and width of a photo in their ad be increased by the same amount in order to double the area of the photo. If the original photo is 12 centimeters wide by 8 centimeters long, what should the new dimensions of the enlarged photo be? As I read through this, it seems that the length and the width of the photo are going to be increased by the same amount. And the goal would be to double the area. So that maybe I'm picturing a photo before and after. So over here we'll draw what this looks like. This would be the initial photo. Now they're going to increase this by the same amount in the right and the downward direction. And the reason I'm drawing it this way rather than that way, I think that would get more confusing because I'd have to deal with halves and things like that. And also maybe you're like, well, if this was just a regular image and they stretched it this wide and that tall, maybe it would get out of scale. And you would be right, because if they just add 4 inches or 4 centimeters to one side, it would screw that up. So the original photo is 12 centimeters wide and 8 centimeters long. But the whole deal here is that this is actually being increased by the same measurement on each side. Now, the way I've labeled this originally wasn't really helpful, so I think it would help to know that the 12 was up here and the 8 was over here. Now, if this were an area problem, then all I would do is multiply this by that. So that means that 12 plus x, which I'd prefer to write as x plus 12, times 8 plus x is equal to whatever the area is. But make sure you understand that this is the entire height and width. So this would be the new area. And we know that the new area is double the original area. And since we still haven't found that out, in a calculator I would punch 12 times 8 to get 96. And if I doubled that, that means that the new area would be 192 centimeters squared. So once these changes have been made, there's a bunch of in-between steps for me to figure out that that would have to be 192. If this was something times another thing equaling 0, we'd be almost done, but we're not. And the reason we're not is because we have this value of 192. And I'm going to clear my parentheses. First outer I've erased and changed that order just to help me out. First, outer, inner, and then last is equal to 192. Then I'd go in and try to get 0 on the right side. And I have an x squared plus 20x minus 196 is 0. So now I'd be looking for the factors of 96 that would add up to 20. Well, 20 and 1 won't work. I'm sorry, the factors of 96 that would add up to 20. 96 and 1 won't work. 2 and 48 won't work. 3 and 32, nope. 4 is starting to feel a little bit better. And these are things that aren't really easily done in the head, so maybe I do 96 divided by 4 to get 24, and I make sure I feel comfortable with that, because there I come across my answer, which would be x plus 24 times x minus 4, and those would be the factors, which means that either my answer is negative 24 or 4. Now, because this problem is all about increasing area, it wouldn't make sense that I would have a negative solution. So I would cross that out, and I would say 4 centimeters, and I'd be done with what I solved for. Now notice that I said what I solved for, because the original question was what should the new dimensions be. So for the new dimensions, I will say 16, because I've added 4 to 12, by 12, because I've added 4. So 16 centimeters by 12 centimeters. Now, the frustrating thing about checking these is as you plug 4 back in here, you would want to make sure you got 192. But if you didn't create the problem correctly, you wouldn't have the best check. So it was probably better to go in and plug it into here and to see that, well, your new side would be 16 times 12, and you type that in, and hopefully you would get 192, which was the new area. And then you could also kind of just do a sanity check to make sure you set it up originally right, to say 12 times 8 was 96, and revisit the words to make sure everything flows. The height of a parallelogram is 18 centimeters less than its base. If the parallelogram has an area of 175 square centimeters, what is its height? Now, first of all, you have to know the formula for the area of a parallelogram. And that might mean looking up a resource or Googling it. But really it is the first base plus the second base divided by 2 times the height of the parallelogram. You'll see this. Whoops, dang it. I was doing a trapezoid. Idiot. All right, like I said, the area of a parallelogram is A equals base times height. It's a little bit easier, right? So here's the drawing that I'll draw to help me out. And I'm going to want to know what the height is, and I'm going to want to know what the base is. Now I got two choices. I can either treat this as x or this as x. And if I wanted something that was 18 less than the base, then I think I would start with the base and then take away 18 from it to get the height. Now when I plug things in, I know the area is 175. The base is x. The height is x minus 18. And then once I distribute this, honestly, I'd probably just shuffle this to the one side and that to the other side. So I'm going to do this in the same step. I'm distributing the x squared minus 18x. But I have to make sure that as I cut this corner, I don't get tripped up and I write 175 on the other side correctly. From both sides, I'll subtract 175. Draw my line underneath, and I'll write x squared minus 18x minus 175 equals 0. What are the factors of negative 175 that add up to negative 18? Now this is kind of past the point of really wanting to list all the possible factors. So you could be like 1 and 175, well then 2 and something. And then you could do 175 divided by 3 and divided by 4. But I saw this and I thought, well, I could count up by 25s to get 175. So I immediately grabbed my calculator and I just did 175 divided by 25, and I got 7. Because the factors of 175 that add up to negative 18 will work if this number is negative and that number is positive. Now, that fancy footwork, that's challenging. So just keep on punching into your calculator 175 divided by 1, divided by 2, divided by 3, and so on to find your way to the answer. And since 7 ended up being the correct choice, you wouldn't have had to have gone on forever. So now the factored form is going to be x minus 25 times x plus 7 is 0, which means that x is either 25 or negative 7. And for this problem, if I go back to my original, because this is algebraic, maybe a negative would work, but if I imagine this negative 7 being up there, that's a no-go. So I'll cross this out. I'll even leave that work shown so my teacher knows I tried it out. And I'm going to end up summing my answer, x equals 25. Jump back, were there units? Yes, there were. Centimeters, but technically x would just be 25. And they asked for the height, so let's go in and fill things in. This is 25, which means that this would be 25 minus 18, which is 7. So I wouldn't just put 25, I would actually end up giving the wrong answer. So I would say the height is 7 centimeters. And the only way I would check this is though it was a real-world problem. So I'd have to reread it maybe and be like the height of a parallelogram is 18 centimeters less than its base, so 25 minus 18 is 7. If the parallelogram has an area of that, so the only way I'm going to get area is by multiplying this times that, and I would get 175 going about it this way. Now, these word problems, these should not be feeling like they're 100% understood right now. Like there's a path to getting more comfortable with them, and it's really just kind of a clumsy force fight your way through it and come seek the teacher with questions. And make sure that as you do go to talk to your teacher, don't just say, I don't get it. Like, show him or her what you tried to do. You know, maybe list out the information, because if you've made some thoughts beforehand, it's going to make them so much more able to help you specific to what your needs might be.